Steve Harvey has hosted Family Feud for years. He has seen every kind of family walk through those studio doors. He has seen the tears, the laughter, the surprises, and the drama that comes with putting real families on national television. But what happened on a quiet Thursday afternoon in October 2024 left him completely frozen on live television. For the first time in his long and legendary career, Steve Harvey did not have a single word to say. There was a time when loyalty meant something. There was a time when standing beside your partner through thick and thin was not just a wedding vow but a way of life. But when Marcus Thompson stepped onto the Family Feud stage with his wife and 3 children, nobody in that studio audience of 200 people could have guessed what was hiding behind his confident smile. What came out on national television that day was not just a family secret. It was a betrayal so deep, so raw, and so painfully public that it silenced every single person in the building and brought Steve Harvey to a complete and total standstill. If stories like this remind you why honesty and loyalty matter in a family, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next in this story. The Thompson family from Atlanta, Georgia looked like the picture of happiness when they walked onto the Family Feud set. Marcus Thompson was 44 years old, a tall man with a confident smile, broad shoulders, and a firm handshake that said he was used to being in charge. He worked as a senior sales manager at one of the biggest car dealerships in the Atlanta metro area. He wore a sharp navy blue suit that day and looked like a man who had everything figured out. His wife, Denise Thompson, was 42. She was a kindergarten teacher at a public elementary school in their neighborhood, a job she had held for 15 years. Every morning, Denise would wake up at 5:30, get herself ready, pack 3 lunches for her children, drive to school, and spend the next 8 hours teaching 5-year-olds how to write their names, count to 100, and share toys with each other. Then she would come home, help her own kids with homework, cook dinner, clean the kitchen, and do it all over again the next day. She never complained. She never asked for credit. That was just who Denise was. Standing beside Marcus and Denise were their 3 children. Kayla was 17, a junior in high school with her mother's gentle eyes and her father's stubborn determination. Marcus Jr. was 14, quiet and observant, the kind of kid who noticed everything but said very little. And then there was Ava, just 9 years old, wearing a bright yellow dress and bouncing with excitement because she was going to be on television. Everyone in their community knew the Thompsons. Denise volunteered at their church every Sunday. She organized the annual neighborhood block party. She drove elderly neighbors to their doctor appointments and brought homemade meals to families going through hard times. People would often say that Denise Thompson was the kind of woman who held her entire community together without ever asking for anything in return. Marcus and Denise had met in college 20 years ago. He was the charming business major who always knew what to say. She was the quiet education student who sat in the front row of every class and actually did all the reading. Their love story was the kind that other people admired. Marcus had proposed at their college graduation ceremony, getting down on one knee in front of hundreds of people. They married a year later at Denise's grandmother's church in a small ceremony filled with gospel music and homemade food. For the first decade, their marriage was everything they had dreamed it would be. They bought a house in a good neighborhood, raised their children with values of honesty, respect, and faith, and built a life that looked perfect from the outside. But what nobody knew, not their neighbors, not their church friends, not even Denise's own sister, was that the last 3 years had been very different behind closed doors. Denise had noticed the changes slowly at first. Marcus started working late more often. He would take phone calls in the garage or step outside when his phone buzzed during dinner. There were receipts for restaurants she had never been to and hotel charges on the credit card that did not match any business trips. One time she found a woman's perfume scent on his jacket collar. Another time, she noticed he had deleted entire text message threads from his phone. But Denise had done what so many loyal, devoted partners do when they sense something is wrong. She pushed those doubts down deep inside her chest and told herself she was imagining things. She told herself that Marcus was just stressed from work. She told herself that after 18 years of marriage, a little distance was normal. She chose trust over suspicion because that was what she believed marriage required. The Family Feud appearance had actually been Denise's idea. She thought it would be a fun activity for the whole family, something to bring them closer together during what had been a tense and distant year. She had applied 6 months earlier and was absolutely thrilled when the producers called to confirm their spot. She saw it as a sign from the universe that good things were on the way for her family. What Denise did not know was that the universe had a very different plan for that Thursday afternoon. The Thompsons were facing off against the Rivera family from Houston, Texas. The Riveras were a loud, fun, loving family of 5 led by Mr. and Mrs. Rivera, both retired teachers who spent their days spoiling their grandchildren. The mood in the studio was light and playful as both families got settled on stage. The game started well for the Thompsons. Marcus was charming during the introductions, cracking jokes about how Denise was the real boss of the family and how he just did whatever she told him. Denise laughed along, squeezing his hand and shaking her head the way wives do when they love someone despite themselves. Steve Harvey liked them right away. He told Marcus he seemed like a good man, and Marcus said thank you like it was the truth. "Marcus, how long you been married?" Steve asked during the opening banter, leaning on his card stand with that trademark grin. 18 beautiful years, Steve," Marcus said, putting his arm around Denise and pulling her close. "This woman right here is my rock. I would not be half the man I am without her." The audience applauded warmly. Denise beamed with pride, her hand resting on Marcus's chest. Their children smiled from the family lineup. It was the perfect family picture, the kind you would put in a frame on the mantelpiece. But sometimes, pictures lie. The game moved through the first 2 rounds with normal energy. The Thompsons won the first face, off with a strong answer about things you find in a kitchen, and they stole the second round from the Riveras after the Riveras got 3 strikes on a question about things people do at the beach. Everything was going smoothly. The Thompsons were winning, the audience was laughing, and Steve was doing his thing. Nobody saw what was coming. Then came the 3rd round. And the question that would change everything. Steve straightened his suit jacket, looked at his card, and read the question in that deep, commanding voice that carried across the entire studio. "We asked 100 married men's name something you have hidden from your wife." Marcus was up for the face, off against Mr. Rivera. The buzzer stood between them. Both men reached forward. Marcus hit it first. Now, this is the kind of question that usually gets a funny answer on Family Feud. A purchase they should not have made. A fast food habit. A dent in the car they never mentioned. Maybe a stash of candy hidden in the office. That is what everyone expected. That is what Steve expected. That is what the producers expected. And that is certainly what Denise expected. But Marcus froze. He stood at the podium with his hand still on the buzzer, his mouth half open, and he did not say a single word. The seconds ticked by. 1, 2, 3, 4. The playful energy in the studio evaporated like water on a hot skillet. Something had shifted. "Marcus," Steve said, leaning forward with a confused smile. "You all right there, brother? Name something you have hidden from your wife." Marcus looked at the survey board. He looked at Steve. Then he made the fatal mistake of looking at Denise. And in that moment, something in his face cracked wide open. The confident sales manager's smile disappeared. The easy charm vanished. What was left was guilt. Raw, unmistakable, unfiltered guilt written across his face like a newspaper headline. A phone. Marcus finally stammered. "A second phone." The answer landed on the survey board. Number 3 answer. 16 points. The audience clapped politely, but the energy in that room had shifted like a cold front moving through. Steve noticed it immediately. The camera operators noticed it. And most importantly, Denise noticed it. Because Marcus had not said that answer like a man making a joke for the cameras. He said it like a man telling the truth by accident. The Thompsons decided to play the board. The family gave their answers one by one, and they managed to clear the board without getting 3 strikes. But the damage from Marcus's answer was already spreading through the family like poison. Nobody was laughing anymore. Nobody was high-fiving. The round ended, but the question hung in the air like smoke. When it was time for the next face-off, Denise stepped up to the podium. But instead of focusing on the game, she turned and looked directly at Marcus, who was standing in the family lineup trying to act normal. "Marcus," she said. Her voice was quiet, but every microphone in that studio picked it up with perfect clarity. "Do you have a second phone?" The studio went dead silent. 200 people held their breath at the same time. This was not part of the game. This was not scripted. This was not entertainment. This was real life crashing through the television screen like a fist through glass. Steve Harvey stood between them, his question card still in his hand, caught in a moment that no host training could have prepared him for. He did not know whether to continue the game or step back and let whatever was happening just happen. "Denise, baby, come on," Marcus said, forcing out a nervous laugh that fooled absolutely nobody. "It was just a game answer. I was just saying whatever came to mind. Let us just play." But Denise was not laughing, and 17-year-old Kayla was not laughing either. From her spot in the family lineup, Kayla had gone pale. Her hands were shaking at her sides. And then Kayla did something that nobody on that stage or in that audience expected. She stepped forward and spoke. "Mom." Kayla's voice was shaking, but it was clear. "I found it. 2 months ago. I found his other phone hidden in the glove compartment of his car. There were messages on it. I did not know how to tell you. I am so sorry, Mom. I did not know what to do." The studio erupted. Audience members gasped audibly. Several women covered their mouths with their hands. An older man in the front row shook his head slowly, his jaw tight with anger. The Rivera family across the stage looked deeply uncomfortable, some of them staring at the floor. Marcus stood at the podium with his hands gripping the edges so hard his knuckles had turned white. His face had gone from nervous to ashen gray. Steve Harvey did something in that moment that he had never done before in his entire career on Family Feud. He held up his hand toward the production booth, looked directly into the main camera, and said 5 words that would become one of the most replayed, most shared, and most discussed moments in the history of the show. "Hold on. Stop the game." The theme music did not play. The lights did not change. The cameras kept rolling, but the game was over. What was happening now on that stage was something far bigger than any survey question, any point total, or any prize money. This was a marriage unraveling in real time on national television. Denise's hands were trembling. She looked at her daughter, this brave 17-year-old girl who had been carrying a grown man's secret on her young shoulders for 2 months, and the pain that crossed Denise's face was something that every single person in that studio felt deep in their chest. This was not entertainment. This was a wife discovering that her worst fears, the ones she had spent 3 years pushing down and ignoring, were all true. And it was happening on a stage with 200 strangers watching and millions more who would see it later. Marcus tried to recover. He stepped toward Denise with both hands up, the way people do when they know they are cornered. "Baby, please listen to me. It is not what you think. Let me explain. Please. We are on television right now. Can we just talk about this at home? Please." And that was when Denise found her voice. She stood up straight. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and she looked at Marcus with a kind of calm that was somehow more powerful and more devastating than any scream could ever be. "No, Marcus. We are going to talk about this right now. Because I have been asking you for 3 years if something was going on. For 3 years, you looked me in my eyes, the woman who cooks your food, washes your clothes, and raises your children, and you told me I was crazy. You told me I was being insecure. You told me I was imagining things. You made me feel like something was broken inside me for daring to question you. And now our daughter, our 17-year-old child, is standing on a television set telling me that she has been carrying your secret because she loved her mother too much to break my heart." There was not a single sound in the studio. 200 people sat in total silence. Several audience members were openly crying. A woman in the 3rd row was pressing her hand against her chest and shaking her head slowly, as if she had lived this exact story herself. Little Ava tugged on Marcus Jr.'s sleeve and whispered, "Why is Mommy crying?" The microphones caught it, and that one innocent question from a 9-year-old in a yellow dress broke something in every person in that room. Steve Harvey stepped forward. In all his years of hosting, in all the thousands of families he had welcomed to his stage, he had never once inserted himself into a family's personal business on camera. That was not his role. He was there to ask questions and make people laugh. But this moment was different. He could see a woman being humiliated in front of the world. He could see children being hurt by an adult's choices, and Steve Harvey was raised by a mother who taught him that when you see something wrong happening, especially to a woman and her children, you do not stand by and watch. You step in. "Marcus," Steve said, and his voice was different now, lower, steadier, not the comedian's voice, not the host's voice, the voice of a man who had lived long enough to know what was right. "I am going to talk to you right now, not as a game show host, but as a man, as a husband, as a father who has 3 daughters of his own." Marcus stood completely still, his eyes darting around the studio as if looking for an emergency exit that did not exist. "You see that woman right there?" Steve pointed at Denise. "That woman has spent 18 years building a life with you. She wakes up before the sun to make sure your children have everything they need. She teaches other people's kids all day long and then comes home and takes care of yours. She applied to come on this show because she wanted to bring her family closer together. She wanted a fun memory with the people she loves. And you are standing here with secrets that your 17-year-old daughter has been carrying on her young shoulders because she loves her mother too much to destroy her." Steve paused and took a breath. The camera moved in close on his face, and what millions of viewers would later see was not the entertainer. It was not the comedian. It was a man who had walked through his own failures in marriage, who had made his own mistakes, and who had learned the hardest possible lessons about what really matters in life. "I have made mistakes in my life, Marcus," Steve continued. "I am not standing up here pretending to be perfect. No man is. But I will tell you something I learned the hard way, and it cost me dearly to learn it. You can lose money and make it back. You can lose a job and find another one. But when you lose the trust of the woman who chose you, who built her life around you, who gave you children and raised them while you were out doing whatever you were doing, Marcus, that is something you may never get back. Not ever. And right now, right this second, your wife and your children are standing on this stage giving you one more chance to be honest. One more chance. Do not waste it." The audience broke into applause. Not the polite, game, show clapping that happens when someone gets a good answer. This was real, heavy, emotional applause from 200 people who recognized truth when they heard it and who needed Steve Harvey to say what they were all feeling. Something in Marcus finally collapsed. His shoulders dropped. The fight drained out of his body. The excuses died in his throat. He looked at Denise, and for the first time in maybe years, he was not performing. He was not selling. He was not the smooth-talking sales manager. He was just a man standing in the wreckage of his own choices, finally seeing the full weight of what he had done. "She is right," Marcus said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. "Denise is right. About everything. About the phone. About the lies. About all of it. I have not been the husband she deserves. I have not been the father my kids deserve. I got lost somewhere along the way, and I was too proud and too scared to admit it. I thought I could keep everything separate. I thought I could have my family and my lies at the same time. I was wrong." He turned to Kayla, and his voice cracked completely apart. "Baby girl, I am so sorry. You should never, ever have had to carry that weight. That was not your burden. That was mine. I failed you. I failed your brother. I failed your sister. And I failed your mother. I am sorry." Kayla was crying silently, tears running down her face. Marcus Jr. had his arm protectively around little Ava, who had buried her face in her brother's side. Denise stood with her arms crossed, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her back was straight and her chin was lifted. She was not falling apart. She was standing in her truth, and there was a quiet, unshakable power in that. Steve walked over to Denise and said something that the boom microphone barely caught but the cameras captured perfectly. "You are one of the strongest women I have ever seen stand on this stage. Whatever you decide to do from here, whether you stay or whether you go, you are going to be just fine, and your children are going to be fine, because they have a mother who showed them what integrity looks like when everything is falling apart. Denise nodded slowly, pressing her lips together to hold in the sob that was building in her chest. Then she did something that stunned every person in that studio. She turned to Marcus and spoke with a voice that was raw but unbreakable. "I am not going to scream at you on national television, Marcus. That is not who I am. That is not who I want my daughters to see me become. But I need you to hear me. I did not stay in this marriage for 18 years because I was weak or because I was stupid. I stayed because I believed in us. I believed in our family. I believed in the promises we made in my grandmother's church. And if there is any chance at all of saving what we built together, it starts right here, right now, with the truth. All of it, every last piece. No more second phones. No more hiding. No more making me feel like I am crazy for knowing in my gut that something was wrong." 200 people rose to their feet, not for Marcus, not for the game, not for the cameras, for Denise, for a woman who, in the single worst moment of her entire life, on the biggest and most public stage imaginable, had chosen dignity over anger and grace over revenge. Steve Harvey stood in the middle of that stage with tears rolling openly down his cheeks, and he did something he had never done before on Family Feud. He stepped in front of the main camera and spoke directly to every single person watching from home. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the show we planned today, but I believe with all my heart that this is the show America needed to see. Because what you just witnessed is the real cost of dishonesty. It does not just hurt the person you lied to. It hurts your children who end up carrying secrets that are not theirs. It breaks apart the home that someone else spent years building. And it takes a moment like this, in front of the whole world, for some people to finally wake up and face what they have done." Steve continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But you also saw something incredibly beautiful today. You saw a woman who refused to let betrayal turn her into someone she is not. You saw a teenage girl who loved her mother enough to speak the hardest truth of her young life on live television. And you saw that sometimes, the most painful moments in our lives are also the ones that give us a chance, just a chance, to start over and do it right." The episode never finished its regular game. The producers made the decision to award both families their full prizes. The Rivera family was gracious and respectful about the unusual ending. Mrs. Rivera later told a local reporter that she had hugged Denise backstage and told her she was praying for her family. When the episode aired 3 weeks later, it broke the internet. The clip of Steve Harvey saying, "Hold on, stop the game," was viewed over 50 million times in its first week. But it was not the drama that people kept sharing. It was Denise's speech about honesty and strength. It was Kayla's brave confession. It was Steve's raw and honest words about trust and family. Those were the moments that people sent to their partners, their friends, their parents, and their children. Denise Thompson became an overnight symbol of quiet strength. Women from every corner of the country reached out to her on social media, sharing their own stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and resilience. Denise, who had never wanted to be famous and still showed up to teach kindergarten the Monday after the episode aired, was overwhelmed and humbled by the response. 3 months after the episode aired, a local Atlanta news station did a follow-up story. Marcus and Denise were in marriage counseling. It was not easy. There were hard days and even harder conversations. There were setbacks and tears and moments when it seemed like the damage might be too deep to repair. But both of them were committed to the process. Not for the cameras or the public. For their children, and for the 18 years of life they had built together. Marcus posted a public apology online that surprised everyone with its raw honesty. He wrote, "I broke the trust of the best woman I have ever known. Steve Harvey told me I might never get that trust back, and he was right to warn me. I do not deserve sympathy, but I am going to spend however long it takes proving to my wife and my children that I can be the man they needed me to be all along. Not because I deserve a second chance, but because they deserve a husband and father who finally chooses honesty over selfishness." Kayla, the brave 17-year-old who had spoken up on live television, started a blog called, "It Is Not Your Burden," where she wrote about the emotional weight that children carry when they discover a parent's secrets. The blog went viral within weeks. School counselors across the country began sharing it with students. Kayla received messages from thousands of young people who had been in similar situations and had never known how to talk about it. She was eventually offered a full scholarship to study psychology at a university in Georgia, inspired by her own experience to dedicate her life to helping families heal. Steve Harvey talked about the Thompson family many times in the months that followed. In one interview, he said, "I have been on television for over 3 decades. I have made people laugh millions of times. But the moment I am most proud of is the day I stopped a game show because a family standing in front of me needed help more than they needed prize money. That is what having a platform should be about." 1 year later, Family Feud invited the Thompson family back for a special update segment. They walked onto that stage together, all 5 of them, holding hands, Marcus and Denise. Kayla, now a high school senior, Marcus Jr., a little taller and a little wiser, and Ava, now 10 years old and still the most honest person in the family. Steve greeted them with a hug that lasted longer than any television hug should. Then he asked Denise how she was doing. Denise smiled, and for the first time on that stage, there was no pain hiding behind it. "Steve, we are not perfect," she said. "We are never going to be the family in the picture frame that looks like nothing ever went wrong. But we are real, we are honest now. And you know what? Real and honest feels so much better than perfect ever did." Steve pointed at Denise the way he points at a contestant who just gave the number 1 answer. "That right there," he said. "That is what family actually means. It does not mean you never fall down. It means when someone in your family falls, you decide together whether you are going to help each other back up. And this family, this beautiful, imperfect, honest family, decided to get back up together." The Thompson episode remains one of the most watched and most discussed moments in the history of Family Feud. Not because of the scandal, not because of the drama, but because of what came after. Because a family that had every reason to fall apart chose to hold on. Because a woman who had every right to walk away chose to fight for what she believed in. Because a teenager found the courage to tell the truth when it mattered most. And because a game show host understood that some moments are bigger than any game and had the wisdom to stop everything and be human. Marcus would later say in an interview that the worst day of his life was also the day that saved him. Standing on that stage, being exposed in front of the entire country, was the most humiliating experience I have ever been through, he said. But it was also the wake-up call I desperately needed. Steve Harvey was right. I almost lost everything. And everything was standing right there on that stage with me the whole time. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the importance of honesty, loyalty, and family, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story like this one. We bring you the most incredible Family Feud moments every single week, stories about real families, real struggles, and real strength. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.